Welcome to Oxford, Lauren.
Thank you.
So glad you're here. Lauren is my former student at Mississippi University for Women, and she graduated in 2021. And I realized that I sent out like an email to people, and I was like, Lauren's going to be here. Y'all got to come meet her. And I was like, I was her thesis director. And then I went back and like checked some of our emails. I totally was not her thesis director.
But you played a very big role.
Ellen Ann Pinterest was, and so I blanked on that. But I do feel like you were in my class so many times, and I read these essays, which became a memoir so many times that I feel like in my heart I am your thesis director. So we're just gonna stick with that. So this was like an early version of your thesis project, and you started writing these essays maybe around 2019 or something.
So yes, and let me just say that I'm so honored to be in conversation with you, because you really helped me believe in that this was a story that was worth telling, because the very first essay I wrote was Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, that is like midway through the collection now, but you loved it, I think, and you helped me, see that it was a story that was maybe larger than just one essay. So I'm just always in awe of your work, and just honored that you can be here, because you played such a big role in getting this book out into the world. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, and then another early one was Split the Baby, right? Like the titles, where those are the two I feel like that stand out most to me.
Yep.
But yeah, just describe kind of like, I think it's really interesting to have a thesis project in any form that goes on to see publication, because usually those are kind of considered our practice, So how did it develop, like even after, or just kind of give us an origination story?
Yeah, so, I wrote that one essay, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, and it touched on some topics. I'll just give some context, which is that growing up, I had a very divided family. So my mother and father divorced when I was 4 years old, and my father's Catholic, my mother's Jewish, and they both remarried, and then my dad later moved back, and they lived in the same suburb. And so I had two very different, you said I had two childhoods, which I was like, I kind of did. Just two very different households that I was kind of living and adapting to these two worlds. And so that was always something that kind of like was lurking in the back of my mind. Like, I kind of had a weird childhood, and I'm like, maybe should explore that, but I didn't really know how to start. And so I wrote that Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, which started by thinking about glamour shots that I did at the mall in the 90s with my stepmother. Did anybody else do glamour shots? It was like a very 90s thing. But it was the first moment where my stepmother was sort of like claiming me as her daughter in a way that was, at the time, I didn't realize was like wildly inappropriate. But looking back, I was like, okay, I need to kind of explore what that relationship was like, and what it meant to my mother, and how painful that was for her. So that was kind of the germ of the story. And then I always knew that so Split the Baby comes from the Solomon story in the Old Testament Torah. And so that essay started out called Solomon's Story, which is just not as good of a name as Split the Baby. But so I always felt like a weird kindred relationship with that particular story, just because there was these two women who were claiming this baby, and the solution was to propose killing the child, which always sort of felt very wrong and weird to me.
Yes.
And so that was where that germ of an idea grew into like the metaphor that I explore throughout the book.
Yeah. Well, and it is like the households were extraordinarily opposite, right? Like a Jewish mother, like a devoutly Catholic stepmother, and just on all levels, like, you described like your bedroom at one house and your bedroom at the other, the clothes you wore at one house, the clothes and it really was just like a binary, like,
Yeah.
So I found that really interesting, and I was like, yeah, you've got to dig deeper into this and see what you can pull out, because yeah, my parents are still married and still live in the house that I was born in, basically. And so, like, my life, was just...
Well, I'm glad to know that was interesting, because sometimes I'm like, oh, well, only people that, like, experienced divorce will understand this, but I think every family has its challenges, but maybe it's just interesting to see a different point of view, so, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, do you want to maybe read a little
Yeah, sure. And it is only it's 6 minutes and 40 seconds, this reading, so I'm not going to bore you at length. And this is from a chapter called Savior Complex, and I'll just preface this by saying that one of the pieces of this memoir that was really helpful, or one of the documents that was very helpful to me in writing this memoir, was this parenting evaluation. So when my parents were having custody challenges, the court ordered that we have a forensic psychologist who did this parenting evaluation. He did observations at my mom's house, at my dad's house. He did site visits. We went to his office. He interviewed me and my brother. I was 7, my brother was 4. He interviewed my family. He created this 80-page, very detailed document that paints a portrait of our family at this point in time. And so his name was Dr. Katz, and this parenting evaluation is something that I draw from a lot in this particular chapter, but also throughout the book. So I will mention him at some point. Okay, Savior Complex. I learned the word crucifix when my father tells a funny story, or less a story and more a scrap of dialogue about the woman he overheard at the jewelry store. Over time, this scrap will be rubbed shiny smooth with each retelling, like the nickel a magician pulls from behind your ear. Delightful, but only the first time. This is how it goes. I'd like to buy a gold cross necklace, the woman at the jewelry store says. Of course, says the jeweler. He reaches inside the glass case and pulls out a display of various gold crosses, large and small. Some with diamonds on them, some plain. The woman inspects them, dissatisfied. Finally, she asks, do you have any crosses with the little man on them? My father pauses here, then bursts out laughing. His laugh is like a small explosion, a rush of air, high-pitched, then a downward cadence like an arpeggio. His blue eyes crinkle, his mustache dances. At 7 years old, I crave the sound of his laugh, his attention. For a few years, starting not long after Sam was born, my father lived in another house, then another state. He was a voice on the phone, a weekend visitor. In other words, he was once scarce, and perhaps this scarcity is what has made him even more precious to me. I hang on his words, I mirror his laugh with my own, ha ha, even though I do not understand the funny part of the woman's question. Like her, I have also noticed that some crosses have a little man on them. Some don't. I am picturing my father in the jewelry store listening with a sly smile on his face, recording the conversation for later. Was he there to buy something for my stepmother? I remember the time he took Sam and me with him to buy crystal and amethyst tennis bracelet, and I learned that the bracelet had nothing to do with the sport. She's wearing it now, the purple gems glinting when she moves her wrist. Christie's cross has a little man on it, Sam says, pointing to our stepmother's neck, where a slender gold cross dangles from a thin gold chain. That's right, she says, leaning closer so we can see it. It's not just any man. Do you know who that is on the cross? Jesus, I say, before Sam can beat me to it. I look to my father, who nods his approval. The gold Jesus is a miniature of the one that hangs on the wall near the front door, which is nowhere near as big as the one that hangs behind the altar at St. Thomas More Church. Seeing Jesus' figure makes me woozy, ribs straining against his skin, blood oozing from his side, hip bones sharp as knives. My eyes sweep over his every bone, ligament, stringy muscle. Gruesome is the word I've heard my mother use when she talks about the Catholic Church. Jesus is hanging on the cross, which means that this cross is a crucifix, my father says, because Jesus was crucified on the cross. And they put nails through his hands? Sam asks eagerly. Through his hands and his feet. He died for our sins, my stepmother says. She rubs the crucifix between her forefinger and thumb, manicured nails glinting before tucking it inside her sweater. On my own neck hangs a gold necklace, a Star of David, which my mother gave me, only me. She doesn't wear one, and Sam doesn't either, I guess because he's a boy. My stepfather Cecil doesn't wear one, but that's because he isn't Jewish, though he goes to synagogue with us and doesn't care about celebrating Christmas. I like wearing the necklace because it shows I am different than most of my other classmates, that I'm special in some way, like when I get to miss school for the high holidays, or when my friends find out that I celebrate Christmas and Hanukkah. There are other Jewish kids in our second grade at Cottonwood Creek Elementary. We blend in with our mostly white Christian classmates, but we are different from them in subtle ways. Different enough that we are the ones chosen to spin around like dreidels during the one Hanukkah song in the school's holiday musical. Identity is a concept that I don't understand yet. My identity is just a collection of traits, a bingo card of belonging and not belonging. I am a girl, a blonde, blue-eyed girl, a blonde, blue-eyed Jewish girl, a blonde, blue-eyed Jewish girl who celebrates Christmas. I pick up the pieces of myself that I have been given and put them together, puzzling out what they mean. Soon I will begin to see the contradictions inherent in myself. I will learn to camouflage and contort, to become a mirror, reflecting back the girl that others think they want to see. But for now, I am wholly me. This is who I am. I am wearing the Star of David necklace when Dr. Katz conducts his home visits and interviews that will eventually help determine my parents' custody time. He is dark-haired and middle-aged, with wire-rimmed glasses and a kind smile. He is unlike any adult I have ever met, in that he listens more than he talks, sitting cross-legged on the carpet while he asks me questions. He watches everything that I do, which is both thrilling and disconcerting. I can't decide whether to perform and act silly or to shrink down inside myself. Instead, I swing between these extremes like a pendulum. Dr. Katz is observing us and talking to us in order to determine how much time Sam and I should spend at our father's house. My father wants us at his house half the time, and my mother doesn't want to give us up. Plus, she's mad that he and Crystal have been taking us to church, even though their divorce agreement says that the children would be raised Jewish. In his report, Dr. Katz writes that my mother is concerned by the things Sam and I have been saying, things that, in her opinion, Jewish kids shouldn't say. Recently, Sam came home and asked why we don't believe in the baby Jesus. It's not that we don't believe that Jesus ever existed, it's just that we don't believe that Jesus was a Messiah, my mother answered, which left us all feeling confused. My father tells Dr. Katz that he wants his children to receive exposure to Catholicism, as though we are fragile seedlings that need to be moved from the greenhouse to the outdoors, hardened off. He complains that his ex-wife coddles the children. She lacks discipline. Sometimes, he says, you need to bring the hammer down. Dr. Katz talks to me about Hebrew school. He asks me about my Star of David necklace, and I tell him that my mother got it for me 2 weeks ago. He scribbles a little note on his yellow legal pad. He asks me about my religion, and I begin to withdraw. Religion is bigger than me, bigger than St. Thomas More Church and Temple Sinai, bigger than my mother and father, my stepmother and stepfather, bigger than Friday nights and Sunday mornings. It's hard to keep straight the things I am supposed to believe, like who is or isn't the Messiah, or what Messiah even means. But religion is small, too, as small as the symbol that hangs around a neck. My stepmother and my father wear crucifixes. I wear Star of David. I'll stop there.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So you have this 80-page document from Dr. Katz, which he's observing y'all, and you kind of explained it. And then you also have your mother's parenting diary, right?
Yes.
So you got that. That's really just the opening, sort of a note on the parenting diary. But in 2019, your stepfather started sending you these documents, or the diary. So tell us a little bit about how you integrated both of those and just what it was like to receive those and read them so many years later.
Yeah. So in 2019, which is when I really kind of started writing this story, or at least some of the essays that would become this story, I was just telling my family about it because sometimes we just like to rehash old stories about my stepmother Crystal, which that isn't really her name. But he confessed that he had saved all of these legal documents, which they had survived multiple moves, and they contained a lot of really painful memories, and so it was really surprising to everybody that he had just like carried this giant box with him.
Your mother's husband,
Cecil, my mother's husband, yes.
And when did they marry?
They married when I was 5. So Cecil has been in my life almost my whole life. And they were actually at the book signing last night.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
I heard him laugh when I read the part about my dad says we need to bring the hammer down. So it was great to have them there. But so he sent me these documents, the parenting diary, and then the parenting evaluation, and then later my mother sent me her parenting diary, which she had kept from 1999 to 2000 when I was 10 and 11 years old. And essentially she was it was like evidence that she was using for her lawyer to help with custody challenges. And she was detailing like some very challenging moments with me and Sam, and especially me. I was just the older child and like really torn between these two households. And reading her voice just felt like such a necessary piece of the story to me, and like something that, you know, I was almost the age that she was when she was going through these challenges. And so it felt, to me, I almost like related more to her voice than to my own memories in a lot of ways.
And now you have a daughter too.
And now I have a daughter, and I was pregnant at the time I was writing this, so I was thinking a lot about like what kind of mother I want to be and like how painful that would be as a mother to experience. And so I asked her permission to use some of her words from the parenting diary. She was like, sure. She's just extremely supportive, and she read everything beforehand. And then I sort of responded to each excerpt with sort of my own memories, or kind of in just a creative way. And so it felt like I was having a conversation with her, and I really feel like the book is so much better for having my mom's actual voice in it.
Well, and so these kind of parenting diaries are interspersed throughout, and they're briefer sections generally. I think they're all 2 and 3 pages maybe.
Yes,
But yeah, it does create, I think, a really nice rhythm overall too. And then, just having your mother's voice, like you said, is necessary.
And it's only from like a very, limited point of time, that 1 year. And so even though the story kind of moves beyond that chronologically, like somehow it still is, I don't know, it still felt relevant to the story to like go back to that moment. Yeah.
Well, and she kept facts, like, kids dropped off at the, and, and like, so there was emotion, but also like, I don't know. You always think, oh, I'll remember this, or I don't need to write this down. But then the few times in my life where I have consistently kept a journal and then gone back to read it, you don't realize like, oh, I totally forgot that. Like I would not have remembered that. And you also have journaled throughout your life. Yeah,
and I've never been a consistent journaler. Like I have so many notebooks from when I was a kid that have like the first page written on and then like nothing else. But I have journaled, some points consistently, and it seems to be the points that are like hardest in my life, which that's not always fun looking back on, but it was helpful to me to see my own writing about certain memories, because like you said, like I wouldn't have, sometimes it corroborated things that I remembered, but I was like, I don't know when that happened or what exactly was said, and other times it was a memory that I had no recollection of that I was then able to kind of integrate in the story. And I try to never claim, like when I have doubts about my own memories, I try to claim those doubts in the story so that I'm, not just acting like an authority about, it's just my very limited perspective. So,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, any sort of memoir, nonfiction, it's all based on like our emotions and how we were feeling and our perspective. And so, that's why you always get like at the beginning of any sort of memoir essay collection, like, this is just my point.
Write your own memoir. No.
Yeah. For sure. Well, let's see. So the organization of it, I'm curious about, because it's not like chronological. We don't go from, how did you organize it, and how, like, because some of, like, Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, you're a young girl, and, you and Crystal are just bonding, like your stepmother, and that's really toward the end. And so I feel like we kind of go back, a little bit there. But, just how did you decide, like, how to organize it?
Yeah, I thought of this as a memoir in essays, like that's how and so it is loosely chronological in that, like, the first essay is kind of more of an overview of, this is the story I'm going to tell, and then, like, in Mirror, Mirror on the Wall, it ends when I'm an adult, so I kind of am, like, trying to move the story along a little bit, and the last essay is, when I'm a young adult, but I did think that it felt more true to my experience as being sort of a fragmented collection of memory. It's just, like, felt true to how memory works in a way, is like you kind of go forward and backwards, and sometimes you take some detours here, and rather than just starting, and going chronologically, birth through age 23, so I had, when I was writing the whole collection for the thesis, I had, like, sticky notes of, like, this, I need to write about, like, my bat mitzvah, and then I need to write about that year that I converted to Catholicism, and then I need to write about, like, my first real boyfriend, so I had, like, points that I wanted to get to, but I wrote them I didn't write them, like, in order of time.
And then Crystal becomes, like, such a big part of your life, and your stepmother, and then they eventually divorce, and sort of, so there's a lot about that as well.
Yeah, Crystal is...
I didn't know that wasn't her real name. It fits her so well.
Ellen Ann helped me come up with that. And I just have to say, nothing against crystals, because I know some really nice crystals. Yeah. But this is, like, Crystal with a K, like the fast food store. She has a really unique, Googleable name. Okay. She's a Zumba instructor now in Denver. I know this. It's unhealthy, why I know this. But, so she was just, like, this larger-than-life. I mean, she was her prom queen. She was, like, the captain of the cheerleading squad in this small town in Denver, and had this, like, very big complex about that. And one fact that was very impressive to me as a 7-year-old about her was that she could knot a maraschino cherry stem in her mouth without using her fingers, which I was like, oh my God, that's amazing, when I was 7. But she just was kind of this larger-than-life person, but had a lot of bigoted beliefs, and that I don't think I think my mom was maybe aware of some of that, but later, as I got older, I was coming to realize, like, how damaging some of her beliefs really were. So, yeah. And
really leaned on Jesus to substantiate them.
Yes.
As people are wont to do sometimes.
Yeah.
So the last full essay, Children of Divorce, like, I don't think this was in your thesis, and I read
it was.
It was? Okay.
Maybe in a different... I revised it a lot, yeah.
That maybe I read, but it's about your own divorce, and you married really young, and I don't know. I think this is sort of, I don't know. You can tell us a little bit about this, because I think it's really interesting. And you married mostly so he could get a green card.
Yes.
And, I don't know. You're going to be marked somehow.
I know. I was like, I hope he's okay. He's French. It's fine. He's fine. This is just Children of Divorce. Just as I was doing some research, because I just need outside sources when I'm writing to, like, corroborate things that I think, or just to give me some sort of scaffolding to write with. And so I was, like, researching about divorce statistics in America, and I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but if you are a child of divorce, you're, like, 2 times more likely to become a divorcee yourself. And then if a child of divorce marries another child of divorce, you're like...
It's like 200.
Yeah, it's like a crazy amount more likely to get divorced, which I was like, damn. But in a way, I kind of reclaim that, because I'm like, I think children of divorce understand, it's just a thing that happens. Like, it's a good thing that our parents got divorced. I think children of divorce understand that, and it's just like life moves on, and it's just, you never know what path life is going to take you on, and Yeah, so I was really young when we got married, and it was purely for a green card, but I remember having similar doubts the way I remember my mom talking about having similar doubts when she married my dad. So that was just kind of an interesting full circle moment, but
yeah, I also had a first marriage, and I just remember I got just really drunk. I mean, I knew, like, I was 22, so I was really young and just thinking, I don't know how to get a job or anything, so I'll get married.
It's like, why not?
Basically what I did. So, yeah. All right. Enough about
I think
me.
Elizabeth Gilbert said something like, or no, not Elizabeth Gilbert, Cheryl Strayed. She was like, my first divorce inoculated my current marriage. And I was like, that's kind of a good way to think about it, you know.
So this book is dedicated to your brother. We haven't talked about your brother, Sam. And I have 3 siblings, and so I feel like, I don't know, y'all are 3 years apart, is that right? Yeah, and there are 4 of us within 6 years, and your siblings, like, create your whole world, really, as a child. So yeah, tell us a little bit about how he figures into the story and the divorce and all that.
I think that was actually the hardest part for me to write about was, well, I mean, Sam and I are very close still, and he was also at the book signing last night, and Jackson, and he's just, we've always been very supportive of one another, but especially as we got older, when we were teenagers, he was rebelling against my father and our stepmother, and I was sort of just kind of like, I'm just going to keep my head down, I'm going to power through, and you should be more like me because I'm not creating conflicts, and he was creating a lot of conflicts, so we had these kind of like different ways of dealing with that, and so that was hard for me to write because I know that he experienced some really hard things that were different and in many ways worse than what I did, and so I felt like I needed to get his permission to write about some of these things, and he's also told me things that he was like, don't put that in the book, and I totally respect that. And so I mean, he was like an integral piece of my own story, and I often tell him, I'm like, I don't know if I would have survived without you. Like, he was, you know, we were going between these 2 houses, and so he was my constant. You know, we were always on the same custody schedule, and I've heard stories of other kids who are like on different custody schedules, and I think that seems so hard, because we like really relied on each other, and even though we always were bickering, like we were always on the same side. So
I have friends that have published memoirs and everything, and usually their publisher like sends everybody in their family or whoever like contracts to sign, you know, like, we will not sue you, we will not sue. Did y'all have to do any of that?
No, maybe that's like small independent press. They're like, sorry, we don't have legal resources.
Well, we've got no
so
money.
I might get sued. Who knows?
Sue me. Yeah, there's no money here.
I mean, that's why I changed my parents' names remained the same, except for Crystal's, and some of her, you know, identifying information was changed. But otherwise, like my mom and stepdad and brother all read it before and gave their stamp of approval. My dad just got his book in the mail yesterday, so maybe he'll read it. I don't know.
Okay, so your dad didn't read it before.
No, and he didn't seem like he was interested in reading it, so I didn't want to push that on him. And so if he does read it, maybe we can have a good conversation, and we'll see what happens.
So you're originally from Denver and came to Mississippi. You were in D.C. before you came to Mississippi, and you came here as an AmeriCorps volunteer.
Yes.
And have stayed.
Yeah.
And when did you originally come?
I got here in 2013.
Okay.
So I did AmeriCorps for 2 years, and then was like an AmeriCorps state fellow, and so 3.
What was your position in AmeriCorps?
So I was doing Food Corps, which, as you know, AmeriCorps has recently been defunded.
Yes.
And I know their Food Corps has also been affected. So, so that was, we were doing school gardens and teaching kids about nutrition and where their food comes from. And
I was also an AmeriCorps volunteer.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I lived and worked with teens who had babies, and
Okay, yes.
I was like in charge of sort of like telling them how to raise their babies. Meanwhile, I'm 22 and don't know anything about babies.
Yeah.
So it was a little training would have been nice, but it was still like I feel like a really good experience, and we learned a lot. You know, learned a lot like just on the job.
I feel like that's kind of the thing about AmeriCorps. Like they're like, throw you in and just figure it out.
Well, you all rely on each other too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, I came to Jackson for AmeriCorps and like just met a great community of people, that a lot of transplants that have stayed and many that have left.
But a few have stayed.
But a few have stayed. Yeah, my friend Liz, we arrived the same week, and she's still doing like food justice work in Mississippi. So, yeah.
So other than like, I want to talk a little bit about too, like all of the things you've done while you're here. I mean, you're director of the Welty House and Garden, and you work with Mississippi Arts Commission now, and you're a host on Mississippi Arts Hour, and you've started this magazine where you highlight Mississippi artists and activists. Like, how did you do all of this?
Well, not all at the same time.
But like three of those things like are current.
Yeah. Currently my full-time job is at the Arts Commission. Apply for grants if you're an artist. And
y'all still have grant money to give out?
We actually do.
That's awesome.
Well, the legislature gave us grant money, so that's good. And we're still waiting about the NEA, but we think it's going to come through magically. So part of that is doing the Arts Hour, where I get to interview interesting creative Mississippians. And then, in 2022, I started Rooted Magazine, which is a Substack publication. And basically that just came out of, I've had lived in Mississippi for going on 10 years. And I love living in Mississippi. I love living in Jackson, but it can be a challenging place to live too. And I just have known so many people that have moved away, and that's like a really painful part, I think, about living in Jackson, Mississippi. And so I just kind of wanted to like outsource my own thinking about home to hear what others like thought about either why they stayed in Mississippi or why they left or why they came back. And so it's been going on like almost 3 years now, which is crazy.
And you interview people from all over the state. It's not just like...
I did a Rooted interview.
Well, and I'm from Jackson, and my parents still live in the city limits, and so I know what Jackson can be like, and Jackson and Oxford are, a million worlds apart, really. But so you interview, people from all over.
And I mean, I'm always trying, word of mouth is the best way to like get recommendations of who I should reach out to next. I've met the coolest people just by someone being like, you should reach out to this person. And just people in this room that I've met through Rooted Magazine, which has just been such a joy and a privilege. So I feel like I honestly like didn't set out for this to happen, but I feel like I think that starting Rooted Magazine has helped me feel like I'm like in it for the long haul in Mississippi, because I really was like, do I want to stay or do I want to leave? And it's really kind of affirmed just how much I enjoy living here and want to see it thrive.
The interviews are great. I think a lot of people talk about, I know I went to graduate school at the University of Texas, and I was out there for about 3.5 years. And I think if I hadn't gone away for a little bit of an extended period, I wouldn't have felt like so comfortable and happy to come back and to remain. But anyway,
it's because I mean, as a transplant, I'm like, I think for me, and actually I was thinking about that in relation to writing the book, is like, I think I needed to leave home to better grasp what growing up in suburban Denver really like meant, or like what that place and what was specific about place and home for me. And so I kind of envy people that live in the place where they grew up, because I feel like you can just have such a more like you just have such a perspective of a place over a longer period of time that's just so rich. So, but I'm getting to experience that too as an adult. But yeah.
Is there anything you feel like we haven't touched on about the book before we open it up to questions?
I mean, we can see what people, if anyone has questions.
Yeah, let's
outsource it to the audience.
See if people have questions for Lauren.
Dorothy.
Yes. So you started when you were a student writing this, but were there any memoirs that you read while you were a student that made you think, well, I'd like to write my own memoir? Or what point exactly did you think about it being turned into a book?
Oh gosh, yeah. What books did I read as a student that made me want to turn this into a book? I remember reading, I think it was in Ellen Ann's class, maybe Men We Reaped. I mean, Jesmyn Ward's memoir. I've read it multiple times now, but just like, wow. That was just a memoir that blew me away. And Natasha Trethewey's Memorial Drive came out while I was a student, and so I was really reading that book with like an eye towards craft, and she is just such a master of the craft. And there was a specific chapter that she uses second person point of view, and just for that one little chapter, and I was like, oh gosh, I want to do that. And it really, like, there was a chapter that I kind of had to use it to like hypnotize myself in a way, the second person. So that memoir was really influential to me. And Carmen Maria Machado's In the Dream House is another sort of fragmented memoir that I just thought was so beautiful, the way that she structured that. Those are a few that come to mind. Yeah.
And what point did you decide for yourself that you wanted to write more and publish your memoir?
Yeah, at what point did I stop? Well, so, I mean, I knew that I went to this residency. It was actually at the Yiddish Book Center in 2019, and it was for young Jewish writers, and like, you didn't have to be religious. It was just like, if you have any Jewish bone in your body, you can come to this residency. And so I was like, okay, well, I have to write something like Jewish before I get to this residency. And so I wrote this like really messy, like pouring my heart out draft of an essay about, you know, growing up Catholic and Jewish, and everybody came to this residency with a very like polished essay that they had already like clearly workshopped, and was very wonderful, and I felt so intimidated, but I got such good feedback from that. But mostly I learned that I was trying to fit an entire book's worth of experience in 7 pages, and that I really needed to give myself room to expand and deepen and turn it into a longer project. And so that's kind of where the seed of that came from. And then I think when I decided to just keep going with it, I had an agent tell me that I should turn it into a novel, and that would make it more sellable. And I was like, I just worked so hard, like telling the truth. I kind of want to see where this goes as a memoir. So that sort of reaffirmed that belief that I wanted to have it published. Yeah. Thanks.
What a demoralizing thing to say. You've just written a memoir, turn it into a novel.
And he said it in an offhand way. He was like, it won't be hard. Just turn it into a novel. Send me the first 50 pages. And I was like, you're the first agent who's responded to me. I can't do that.
No.
Yeah. Questions? Chris.
So in the years you were working at the Welty House, did you find anything out about your Welty's relationship with her mother that resonated with you or that stuck with you?
Oh, gosh. Wow, that's such a great question from a historian. Yeah, so Welty had a very complicated relationship with her mother, and I think she probably would have been much more reluctant to publish anything about the complicated relationship part of it. But I guess like being at the Welty House and being at the archives in general just really gave me more of an appreciation for like historical artifacts and just archives in general, and I sort of approached my own work in that way, I guess, like using these documents and kind of like using those pieces as almost like historical artifacts that I could draw from and build this narrative. And so I don't know if I was consciously thinking of that connection, but I think in retrospect I was like, it really helped me to understand what a value those, like her extensive collection of letters and like all the research that has been done in her letters, and people just diving into her manuscripts and drafts. And so I think that was just really interesting and a little bit intimidating being at the Welty House, honestly, and like writing a book it's kind of hard to admit you're working on a book and working at the Welty House, but yeah, it was a really good experience. Thanks. Yes?
I'm wondering, having been raised in a multi-religious situation, have you been left either caring not at all about religion, or have you been on your own search, or do you I mean, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but it can go either way. You can either say they're all not worth it, or you start really exploring. It's been my experience with my next religion home. So what is your story?
Oh yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think it's changed a lot at certain points in my life. When I went away to college, I kind of like ended up rejecting religion entirely. And I don't know, kind of maybe ironically moving to Mississippi, where there's very few Jews in Mississippi, it kind of reignited like feelings of like, oh, I am Jewish, like I identify as Jewish. I would say I'm not like a devout religious person, but the kind of like identity and the heritage piece is really important to me. And so I'm raising my daughter Jewish. My husband was raised Baptist, but is not he's not religious at all. So yeah, it's still something that I kind of think about what religion means to me, but
Are there many synagogues in Jackson? I know
there is one synagogue, Beth Israel. Okay. Vivian and I teach in the synagogue. We teach the religious school together. It's
so that's where
wonderful
I
and
went to
chaotic.
Preschool, only because it was convenient and across the
yeah, a lot of people did.
Like,
yeah,
a lot of non-Jews went to Beth Israel, but
and they don't do the
awesome.
Preschool anymore.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great there. I was there, I think, 3 years.
Okay.
At least 2 years, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wonderful place.
But
that's the only one. Okay. Yeah, and yeah, it's just I've loved learning more about Mississippi's Jewish history. To me, it's just like fascinating as someone who grew up in like there being Jews in Mississippi never even crossed my mind that was a thing. So yeah, that's been interesting to learn more. Lee.
I was wondering, when the book first arrived in the mail for me to read, I was enthusiastic, but every page I read, I became more enthusiastic. It seemed to me that every sentence was perfect, and even larger than that, every paragraph. It never occurred to me that I was reading anything but chapters. It didn't read like essays.
Oh, okay.
It read like a narrative that went all the way through. It was just really a wonderful read. I was wondering if you could talk about how long it took you to finish it and get the language that refined. And also a follow-up question, what are you working on now?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. That really means a lot. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you think of it as more of like a flowing narrative, because that's why I ended up going with the memoir-in-pieces, because I really wanted people to not think of it really as an essay collection and more as a memoir. So thank you. And that did involve some editing of like not repeating certain phrases over and over again, which sometimes essay collections can do. But I guess I wrote the draft in a year more or less. But it was very much a draft. And Mary and I were just talking about before this event that like remembering a piece of maybe a recommendation that you had for me, which was one chapter had footnotes in. I was trying to be, kind of artsy, and she was like, "I don't know about these footnotes."
But I never know about footnotes.
Yeah, you did.
I admitted my own prejudice.
You did say that, but footnotes are kind of a divisive thing.
Divisive, yeah.
And after a while, I was like, "Yeah, no footnote. So I guess like it's been like multiple years of revisions, and even like when the proof arrived, I was like, you know, still kind of seeing things. So yeah, the drafts, it sounds like a year to me doesn't sound very long, but like I am a very slow writer, but I was very diligent on this project because I was like, I knew my time at the W was ending, and I also knew that my due date was coming, and I was like, I'm not gonna have time when I have a baby. So yeah, that was kind of the driving force there. But what I'm working on now, Rooted takes a lot of my time actually, so that's always a creative internal debate. But I've really gotten into middle grade fiction, and I have an idea for a middle grade fiction novel. So who knows where that will go? It's just a little germ of an idea, but I want to start working on that someday. Yeah.
Reminds me, I often see like authors reading from their published book, and you'll see like all sorts of like scratch outs and like I don't know. I feel like some people are. I mean, I've never done editing. Like I've never done revising. Yeah. Great. Any other questions? All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you
Really
so much.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. We have books for sale at register, and Lauren will be able to sign here in just a moment.
Oh, I need to get my pens. Thank you.
Yeah, that was fun.
That flowed
Yeah.
very well.
I think that was all right.
Yeah, no, it was great.